Well, hello, Convention of State supporters. My name is Andrew Woodruff. I will be your host for this episode of COS Live, and I'm joined by Rita Dunaway, who is the Legislative Director and the new co-host for COS Live. Rita, how are you?
I'm great. Excited to be with you today, Andrew. We've got a great program.
We do have a great program, and I am excited that you are here too. One thing I'm not excited about, though, or that I wasn't excited about, was Biden's first day in office, because he unleashed, as expected, a flurry of executive orders that were with the intent of just wiping out the previous administration's successes. So we'll be able to talk a little bit about that. I don't know if this is the way that we're supposed to govern, but I know that Rita is going to have a great perspective on this, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Plus, we have a Convention of States. Our first legislative hearing was in 2021 on Friday, and we are having Terry Kramer, who's part of the COS Montana team, come onto the program to tell us about that hearing. He's going to share his perspective and how amazing this hearing was. So we can't wait to get his perspective. But before we get to all of that, of course, we have our Article 5 trivia question with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Andrew, for having me. I'm glad to be here as always. It's so fun to be talking to an increasing crowd, not just increasing in numbers, but increasing in enthusiasm, that we have the only answer to the question of a runaway, out of control federal government. And my role today, of course, is to talk trivia and give away prizes, stuff that you'd like to use to walk and talk and support Convention of States, but also to show your prowess to the whole world that might be watching, that you have the answer to our questions that bedevil many when it comes to Article 5. Now, there's a whole lot going on right now. As you know, there's things happening in the state of Montana. It's happening in a whole bunch of other states. Legislatures are actually going back to work. The things that they get paid for, they're starting to do. And some people say, well, gosh, I kind of liked it in 2020 when they didn't do anything. There's no new laws that take away our freedom. But in either case, we need them to be going in order for us to be able to pass a resolution in states 16, 17, 18, and beyond, which I'm very confident we're going to do this year. So here's my giveaway question for today. And one of the things that's been happening in the legislatures is all these questions come up that a lot of people think, oh, that's unanswerable, since there's never been an Article 5 convention in America, at least not one using the second provision of Article 5, that there's no answers. But the reality is there's lots of answers there. There's lots of history. There's been over 30 conventions that have happened. Now, not a Article 5 convention, but state conventions in order to make compacts and for other reasons. Now there's rules and they've not run off the rails. And there's a lot of people that have spent their entire lives, their sacred fortunes, in figuring out exactly what it is that they are doing and how we can move forward using the precedent of history. Now, of course, Mike Ferris, one of the co-founders of the Convention of States Project, is certainly a constitutional scholar. But the question for our folks today, the question for you to answer is, there's one preeminent scholar, and things are going on in Montana, and this scholar happens to be from Montana. It's unquestionable that he has the knowledge and the background. He learned to speak Latin to understand the intent of the founders in their writings regarding our Constitution. He's worked with 3 different think tanks as a scholar based on the Constitution. Those are the kind of people that you want to rely on for the answers to these unanswerable questions. My question to you, hopefully not unanswerable, and hopefully you'll be the first one to win this hat. I bet you're wondering, why is that hat sitting back there? This is the Convention of States hat that you will get, that you will be able to proudly wear if you are the first one to answer our question. And the question is, who is the preeminent scholar on Article 5 in the Constitution? The number one guy. And the hint is he's from Montana. I'll be back later on to be able to share with you who that is if you don't already know. And I look forward to talking to you then. In the meantime, sit back, maybe take some notes, get educated, and listen to Andrew and Rita, and of course, our state director from the state of Montana.
When President Trump was in office, we applauded all the times that he attempted to roll back the bureaucracy or the status quo in Washington. Every time he went and fought the swamp and tried to drain it, we applauded that. But when he used executive orders, we cautioned that this is not the best approach, because when he leaves office, the person who comes in can just undo all of the progress that he made. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened on Wednesday when President Biden was inaugurated. He was able to just undo basically many of the things that President Trump had fought for. And unfortunately, when you live by the executive order, you can die by the executive order. And Biden said, quote, "It is the policy of the United States to protect, empower, and rebuild the career federal workforce." And Biden said this in one of the executive orders. And it just shows you that he is aimed towards helping the federal bureaucracy, that he's aimed at increasing government, not reducing government. And so he, in this executive order that he issued, it reinstituted some of the robust protections that President Trump was trying to reduce in the federal bureaucracy. So now federal bureaucrats, they can really just do a poor job within their department, but then not have any fear of being fired or removed. So again, this is Biden helping out or protecting the bureaucracy. Furthermore, they're allowed now to unionize and they're allowed to collectively bargain. And the worst thing about this, that I think, is the Office of Personnel Management now gets to look at the possibility of bringing a $15 minimum wage hike for federal employees. This is really concerning because why are they aimed here instead of the millions of people who are unemployed, who lost their job because of COVID, who had their livelihood stripped from them because of the lockdowns? Why should the administration be focused on people who already have jobs, and then just seeking to increase the amount of money they work, while also protecting them from, not doing the best job possible? It seems that the way that the Biden administration is posturing itself just isn't in the best interest of the hardworking Americans who really just want to get back to work. And the last thing that I see is this shows you that one person like Trump can't go into Washington to drain the swamp. And you can't just trust representatives to drain the swamp as well, because it's just not possible, because the bureaucracy, they don't want to limit their own power. And they're going to fight to keep that power and to prevent someone from restraining it. So Rita, I want to bring your perspective on this, because you were a constitutional attorney, and so you have a strong familiarity with these type of issues. Do you think this is the way that we are supposed to be governing, with executive orders and then just one presidency just wiping away the previous executive orders?
Absolutely not. I think it's just an absolutely terrible development. And you're right on, Andrew. The framers wanted the president to have a small set of limited powers, just like the rest of the federal government. The federal government is a government of specific enumerated powers that are listed in the Constitution. And they're not that many, right? The Constitution's not a super long document. It doesn't even take very long to read. The president is not a king. They wanted the opposite of that. His powers outlined in the Constitution say nothing about nationwide mandates, control of immigration unilaterally, or making deals with foreign powers without the consent of Congress. And as you pointed out, Andrew, President Biden effectively undid almost all of the Trump legacy with just a few strokes of his pen, because they have both been using this executive order to accomplish what they wanted to get done, rather than using the proper constitutional processes. So clearly, we need a better, bigger, constitutional solution, a structural solution to the massive size and power of the federal government, and just sending the right person to office in Washington isn't going to do it. If we really want the president to have an appropriate constitutional role, there's only one thing to do, and that is to call the first ever Article 5 Convention of States. A Convention of States is called upon the application of the states. It's controlled by the state legislatures, and it has the power to propose constitutional amendments. Those amendments can, among other things, limit executive power by banning these kinds of executive orders. They can clarify the intent of the framers in Article 2, and they can force Congress, rather than executive agencies, to make every single law, regulation, and rule that affects the lives of the American people. These amendments proposed at a convention of states can limit the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. They can remove the loopholes that courts have opened in our Constitution and effectively shrink Washington's power, and even eliminate some of the federal agencies altogether that don't even belong there. If we can force Washington to stay inside its constitutional box, then the legions of federal employees we pay for will no longer be necessary, because we'll get a federal government that goes back to performing its specific enumerated powers in the Constitution.
And so far, we have 5 million Americans who have voiced their support for Convention of States, and 15 states have passed the COS resolution, and the chorus is growing. Last week, our friends Mark Levin and Colonel Alan West both took to the airwaves, and they reaffirmed their support for this movement. Check out this clip.
And support Article 5 of our Constitution. Our Constitution, the Convention of States, ultimately, fundamentally, the way to secure our republic. There are many, many things we can do, but we have to focus in on them, and we have to be very strong and resolute about them.
When you look at what is happening in Washington, D.C., and it really does come down to the apathy of our general electorate in many ways, is that they just continue to be reelected. Nothing gets solved. We see our debt continue to explode. I think we're up to close to $27 trillion now, and now we're here, incoming President Joe Biden, talk about another $2 trillion of stimulus instead of opening up our economy. So we have to be concerned about this. And one way that the people, through their state legislatures, can have an effect on what's happening in Washington, D.C. is Article 5 of the Constitution, which is a convention of states. And one of the things that many people talk about in Article 5 Convention of States meetings that I've had the opportunity to travel around the country and present to is term limits for our federal elected officials.
It's that time of year again. All across the country, state legislatures are beginning to consider the Convention of States resolution in committees and in their legislative chambers. Our first was in Montana, where the Senate Judiciary Committee heard testimony from the COS supporters and volunteers on the ground there. It was, in a word, inspiring. Patriots rose to defend liberty, the Constitution, and the next generation. They explained how Convention of States is the proper remedy to put the federal government back in the place where it's supposed to be, that enumerated box that the framers wanted the federal government to be in. Check out this exciting clip of some of those highlights from that hearing.
I am a first generation born in the United States of America. My parents came over from Germany. They escaped the communist East Germany when they were 18 years old, and I grew up listening to what that life was like. I love America. I have 3 children serving at this moment. I feel that one side is taking over and the other side is being silenced. In America, that's why I'm here. I can't be silent.
Let you know that I support a convention of states. I see this as the tool that our founding fathers left for we the people to protect our Constitution and to rein in the control and overreach of the federal government. I feel extremely blessed to have grown up in America. I do believe that this is the greatest country in the history of civilizations, And I want my children, my future children, to grow up in an even better version than what I have been blessed to.
I stand before you as a mother, as a proud patriot of America, and a citizen of Montana. And I was never an activist, a political activist before. But the division in our country has made me rise. We have to overcome that because America is about redemption, and it is about the spirit of freedom and liberty. We make mistakes, that's part of free will. But the founders, when we learn about the founders and the principles in our Constitution, and liberty itself, it makes people rise. It makes people better. That is something that we cannot lose in this country.
As a veteran, I believe as strongly now in the ideals set forth in our founding documents as I did when I joined the Navy. As a young man, all of 17 years of age, I stood alongside a number of other young men and women who swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have not been released from that oath. If those who gave the full measure of service to country could give voice today, they would ask, is our sacrifice all for nothing?
The idea is that you have to choose a side at this point. And you have to make your choice between Montana or the federal government in Washington, D.C. I'm here to tell you that I choose Montana, and I hope that you will choose to support SJR2. Thank you for your time.
Well, we are excited to interview Terry Kramer today, who is part of the volunteer state director team with Convention of States Montana, and he was there at that hearing in the flesh. So we're so excited to get his perspective. Terry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we got to watch that live stream of the Montana hearing, and there were tens of thousands of people across the United States who were rooting for you and for COS Montana. And we were just blown away by how articulate, how measured and balanced that testimony for Convention of States was. But you were actually there. So you have you saw the testimony and the hearing through a different lens than the people who were streaming. Tell us what happened and what it was like.
Well, putting the coronavirus stuff aside, where we had spaced everything out, we had, I believe, 25 volunteers come and testify, which exceeded our expectations, not by a lot, but we were very pleased with that turnout. The opposition, on the other hand, had 6 people testify, 4 of which were full-time John Birch Society members. So there was definitely an excitement and an intensity in that room. The range of testimonies was quite varied. You know, going into the session, the directors got together, and we basically tried to identify what we thought were going to be the arrows shot, pulled out of the quiver by the opposition, and made sure we covered those topics before they had an opportunity to take the floor and tell their side of the story. So I felt we were very well prepared. We had our director team includes a gentleman named Cliff Cisco, and he's the gentleman that wore the Navy hat and the Navy jacket. This guy is the genuine article. He is a Vietnam vet. He's never ever forgot his oath to protecting the Constitution that he gave as a young man when he went to Vietnam, and he's carried it with him throughout his life. And he did an incredible presentation, and you could see people wiping their eyes. It was inspiring to watch. The guy's a genuine American hero, And then we have Lynette, who's in the background. So she's kind of our grassroots leader and does all the citizens builder work and just shoulders a huge burden. Now, she didn't testify, but boy, her presence is definitely felt in our organization, and I can't say enough good about her. And the other state directors, Tracy is our main leader. and her husband, Steve, they both testified. And then I took, I did testify. I have got a kind of a special niche in the group. I've been in the shooting sports industry for about 30 years now. So I took the approach from just clarifying what Convention of States means to the Second Amendment. And then it was just filled in with a smattering of other people, some that came with prepared statements, others who just came to say, you know, I've done my homework. I support Convention of States. Will you senators please support it as well? So very, very exciting in that.
Well, Terry, my hat is off to the Montana team. You all did an amazing job. I know many of us were streaming that hearing and watching it. We were all so proud of you. It was just amazing. And at times, the testimony did make us very emotional and even move us to tears at times. Now, your testimony in particular seemed to focus on this ridiculous claim that unfortunately is often repeated about how an Article 5 convention would pose some kind of threat to the Second Amendment. And I have to say that is ironic because apart from social media, gun shows are probably the biggest source of support for Convention of States. We get a lot of supporters and volunteers from those gun shows. So tell us, why did you feel it was important to really focus on that particular objection?
It really goes back to the previous session 2 years ago where we were trying to basically do a whip count on the senators in the Judiciary Subcommittee. And one senator in particular who was he was a Republican and he did not support us, and he was adamant as a non-supporter of Convention of States. And we got him in the hallway, and all he would say to us is that the Convention of States I can't support it because it will infringe on the Second Amendment. And it really kind of just blew me over. I was like, you know, knowing what I know about the Second Amendment and having rubbed elbows with so many of my peers in the shooting sports business for so many decades, I just never ever heard anything like that before. So I quickly got back. I happened to live right outside of the state capitol, about 15 miles out of the state capitol. And I got back and I put together a presentation, a Google Slides presentation, with the hope that I could one more time have an opportunity to bend this senator's ear, which would have nothing to do with us. And we never ever even got to a vote in the committee 2 years ago. So this time around, I went, okay, I'm not sure where they're getting this misinformation from, but I'm not going to be caught not unprepared a second time. So that's why I put that together, leveraging my background in the shooting sports business and kind of taking a different perspective, not so much the technical part, because everybody knows that's been around Convention of States, that it's not going to have any, if you're a Second Amendment supporter, you shouldn't have any concerns. But I took that perspective of the NRA, and anybody who's been in the NRA as long as I have, you know, they are the watchdogs of the Second Amendment, and they don't miss anything even at the most local, county, city, state, or national level on anything Second Amendment related. And sometimes these legislators just need to hear something like that because they really don't have the time or the wherewithal to do their own research.
I'm really happy, Terry, that you are bringing in your own perspective when it relates to the Second Amendment and like tying that to this, because it goes back to what you were saying earlier about this was a wide-ranging testimony that was presented in this hearing. And when I was watching, I felt that it was in stark contrast to the people who were in the opposition. As you said, there were 4 from the John Birch Society, and all of the opposition, for the most part, they were not from Montana. So there's another piece of contrast there. And the other thing that struck me is that all of them participated through Zoom. And if I remember correctly, none of them opened up their video to show their faces. They just had a black screen with their name. And so to me, that was a really stark contrast to you and the others from the Montana team who were there speaking from the heart, and you were staying on point and talking about how Convention of States is the tool that is necessary to rein in the federal government. So do you think what you and your team did, do you think it left a lasting impression on the committee members?
I sure hope so. I mean, I think it was well articulated and well planned, and it covered the right topics, but you just never know. And that's why even after that session, we've continued to put the pressure on. We continue to do have the signers, and we've got almost 12,000 here in the state of Montana, getting out the effort, do some emailing, do some telephone calls, and even getting pressure from outside the state of Montana. Because as you stated, the John Birch Society never hesitated at all to have out of Montana testimony. So we continue putting the pressure on, and the moment of truth is coming down. As I think today is the day they're scheduled to vote on it. If not, I think by tomorrow. So I hate to count my chickens before they're hatched. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm an engineer kind of guy. I'm hopeful, though, very hopeful.
Well, the Montana team has just worked so hard to get to this point. You all have been relentless at building the grassroots army, which we know is essential, and at building relationships with the legislators, which is essential also. In fact, I'll share with you, Terry, one of the first conversations that I had with your Senate sponsor, Senate McGilvray. He told me that he had been talking with all the senators, all of his colleagues, and they told him that they get more messages asking them to support Convention of States than pretty much any other topic that they hear from people on. That is impressive, and it tells me that you all are on the right track. Now, what do you see as next in the process?
Well, assuming we get past the subcommittee today or tomorrow, then it's going to go to a floor vote in the Senate. And we've been actively doing whip counts, and we're close. You know, we have 100, we have 50 senators. We need half of that, and we're right at that magic threshold, somewhere between 24 and 26. So that's where the next effort is going to be, and I believe our bill sponsor, Senator McGilvray, is kind of projected that to be about 2 weeks out before it would go to a full floor debate and a floor vote. In the meantime, us directors are starting the next, planning the next step, which is, are we going to have to take it to the House side, our Judiciary Subcommittee over there, and then ultimately to a floor vote on the House? And that is a little bit more of an unknown, because we've really focused heavily on the Senate side, because that's where we got stonewalled 2 years ago. And the effort will be switching. If it comes out positive today or tomorrow, it'll switch quickly to the debate at the Senate level. And concurrently, we'll be focusing on, okay, let's get the House prepared. And I feel that, if it comes out strong out of the Senate, it helps momentum going into the House.
That is so encouraging, hearing that, Terry, that you have this plan and you're going to start in the Senate and move over to the House, and that you're going to just really push into liberty as you seek to get the resolution passed. I want to change gears a little bit, though, and talk about kind of Convention of States more nationally, because we are just seeing petitions just flood in right now. And people are signing up to join local teams, and they're signing the petition, and they're getting involved. And it's all absolutely amazing. But it seems like right now this influx is partially due to the fact that, the swamp is back in business. And that's very frightening to many people. They see that when the swamp is back in business, we see an increase in the size of the federal government. And then we see the federal debt going up, and people can sometimes feel powerless when they are under the boot of the federal government in that way. So what would you say to a person who is concerned about this and who is looking for answers right now?
The first thing I always emphasize is, do your research. Convention of States, our website at the national level has lots of information, and there's a lot of information on Convention of States on YouTube. When I got involved into this effort back in 2014 or so, I would sit in front of YouTube and watch for hours. I'm not saying everybody's going to do that, but it's just my kind of personality. And I got to listen to Rita, and I got to listen to Mike Ferris, and I got to listen to Mark Meckler, and I got to become very knowledgeable on Rob Nadelson's work. And to me, knowledge is power. Once you understand the workings of the process and gain this knowledge and go back and study history, it becomes so clear that this is the most well-researched, common sense process to actually solve the problems that we're having with the swamp, like you pointed out, and get the power back out of Washington, D.C. and back into the state governments, where we have an opportunity to have more influence and more say in the way our lives are lived and the way our government treats us.
I love the way you expressed that, Terry, because that is exactly why I initially got involved with Convention of States. Just sheer logic. This is the legal constitutional way to restore our nation. As you know, the COS Article 5 application is for proposals on 3 topics: term limits, fiscal restraints, and limiting the power of the federal government. So I have to ask you, is there a particular amendment idea that you personally are really excited about or believe that America needs the most?
Not particularly, but what I always catch myself doing when I'm watching my favorite news channel and I listen to these swamp rats in Washington, D.C. talking, I always ask myself in the back of my mind, how different a world would we be in, and would I be listening to this if they had to balance the federal budget? And then I always go to the next thing and I go, well, how different a world would we be living in if this senator or our House or our congressman had been relieved of their duties because of term limits years ago? And we had a citizen-based Congress. How different will we be today? And it kind of helps me cope with some of the other craziness that's going on. When I watch the anarchy in cities, especially close to me, like Portland and Seattle and stuff, it gives me a calm feeling in my heart knowing that there is a way to solve this. And our balanced budget is obviously one of them. Term limits is obviously another one. And that's why in our testimony, you heard people come up and they talk about balanced budget. And a lot of these people that testified have come across in the balanced budget amendment efforts going back into the 80s and 90s, going back 30 or 40 years. And they're now, actively on board with the Convention of States effort. So, in my mind, balanced budget is kind of my thing. And then term limits, and then the power issue may take care of itself after you do the first 2. But if not, it's an option.
I love your insight and that you put the balanced budget right at the top. That's one of my big things too. I think it's so unfair to put future generations and saddle them with just the amount of debt that we have. And so I'm happy that you brought that up. I'd like to get a little bit of your story though, in regards to COS. How did you get involved with COS, and tell the viewers why you are spending your time and your resources volunteering with the Convention of States Montana team?
It goes back to like 2013 or 2014. And for years, I've been listening to Mark Levin, and we all know who Mark Levin is, as well as other more conservative talk show hosts. But fortunately, I'm self-employed, And I can podcast Mark Levin, and it's hardly a day goes by that I miss him. And he's such a logical, constitutional thinker, and it fits my personality type. And so I picked up on the Convention of States thing via Mark, and I'm going to say 2013, 2014. I mean, a long time ago, 7, 8 years ago. And I signed a petition back then. I volunteered, and believe it or not, I volunteered, and it took a couple of years from Montana to get around to asking me what I could do or what my interests were. But then I probably joined the team in 2016, and and it's a volunteer effort. People come, people go. The core we've got now, the 5 or 6 of us, have been together now for about 4 years. And that's how I got started in it. And when I first came to it, Mark Levin says, take a look at this stuff. So I did. And I soon realized how little I knew about the Constitution and how little I knew about Article 5. And so I just started digging into it deeper and deeper. And as I said earlier, I watched the YouTube videos. I've gotten a chance to read a lot of Rob Nadelson's writings. I got a chance to read the Harvard Law Review article by Michael Ferris. And the more I dug, the more I wanted to dig some more. And now I've gotten to the point where I think I feel pretty comfortable in my knowledge base. I mean, I'm not where Rita is, but I don't need to be. I'm now more focused on getting the job done here in Montana and getting on to the next steps.
Well, Terry, for people who are watching right now and want to know how they can help the Convention of States Montana team, what would you say to them? How can people help?
I would say put the pressure on the legislature. That is the number one thing. And I hate to say this, but going back to the last legislature, what I really started to realize is that even though we have 12,000 signatures in the state of Montana, which a lot of people in a lot of states are going to say, well, that's not many. But remember, we're less than 1 million people across the whole state and very geographically spread out. But what I found is a lot of the legislators would look at, we'd say, well, you got 300 or 400 in your Senate district or in your House district. And they would just look at you like, well, that's grassroots or astroturf. It's not grassroots. When those 300 or 400 per Senate district, when they started writing letters and sending emails and making telephone calls, they perked up and they started paying attention. And so going into this session, the knowledge level of the legislators, although not at the level I think they should be at, has increased significantly. And so a lot of it is call them, write them, do it multiple times. And handwritten letters, I mean, I'm not saying write it, script. I'm talking about in your words off your computer, sent to them, has huge impacts. And then last I want to say is, our bill sponsor, Senator McGilfrey, is a superstar. His knowledge and his thirst for knowledge on Article 5 of the Convention of States is an amazing inspiration to us. It's taken us to that next level.
Those are really great suggestions, and I hope all of the viewers will take what you just said to heart. Thank you so much, Terry, for coming onto the program to talk about what happened at the hearing in Montana, and we hope that you'll come join us again when Montana passes the COS resolution, or before. We'd love to hear your perspective again. All right, well, we have now the answer to our Article 5 trivia question with Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, back to you.
Okay, I'm back. And I am glad you're back and you stuck around, and I know you got quite a bit from the show today. And if you remember, my question was, who is it that is the preeminent scholar on Article 5? and this hat is up for grabs. And the person who answered it first will get that very hat. We'll box it up and send it off to you so it comes without a crease. And if for some reason you didn't win it, of course, just go to shopconventionofstates.com and you can get your own swag and to be able to wear, walk, and talk about the Convention of States, which is the only solution to the problem of a runaway federal government. So the Montanan that I'm talking about that has worked in 3 different think tanks regarding the Constitution is Rob Natelson, Professor Rob Natelson. And he, of course, is a senior advisor with the Convention of States Project right now. And he has been, his research is now distilled into a book called The Law of Article 5. You can find it on Amazon. I've actually given it away, if you've watched, as a prize for this. I have it on my bookshelf right behind me. And The Law of Article 5 is the book that you can get that is the preeminent book on Article 5. So there's your answer for the day. Now let me turn it back over to Andrew and Rita to wrap this up.
If you are frustrated with corrupt politics, if you're sick and tired of having your rights steamrolled, know this: there is a plan. The American founders were brilliant, and they knew that this might happen. So they gave us a solution for such a time as this. That's why Convention of States is working to use Article 5 of the Constitution to put the people back in charge. COS equips American patriots like you to reclaim the right of self-governance. The movement is well underway, with 15 states on board already. 34 is the magic number. When we get to convention, we're going to send the career politicians packing, force DC to use our money wisely, and place meaningful limits on federal overreach. So go to conventionofstates.com, share the petition, join your local Convention of States team. Help us to make history and change DC forever.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. Follow us on Rumble, MeWe, Gab, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, and Instagram. Wherever you get your social media buzz, make sure to subscribe and to share everything Convention of States. And don't forget also to check out the Battle Cry with COS co-founder and president Mark Meckler. It's on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time every Sunday. It's amazing. As I say always, you get your dose of Mark Meckler, but it's just never quite enough. Makes you want to show up for the next Sunday to hear what's going on, to hear his amazing perspective on everything COS related. We are going to have to see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time because we are out of time today. So we'll see you next week, same place, same time. And it's time for us to get back to work. And remember, if you're looking for the person who's going to restore the Republic, look in the mirror. All right, that's all we have time for. See you next week.